what's up, everybody? This is your boy John, as always, and with me is my boy Matt here.
You're still my arch nemesis, John.
Oh,
What's
wait a
going
minute.
on?
Hold on a minute. Time out. Playing the red flag here. Why are you saying that we're like enemies again? I mean, I understand we're doing this Far Cry episode, but why are we still going at this again?
Why not?
No, like I thought we were bros, but now you want to be my arch nemesis? Like, that's pretty screwed up, man.
Well, we got to be on different factions. We're talking about Far Cry.
I mean, but the point of the story here is like, when we go over the episode, I mean, there's points where you can play co-op, bro. I mean, you and I were playing that stuff together, and I was like enjoying the fact, but then of course, as always, Matt doesn't ever like to go in just, quiet and stealthy like. No, he wants to go in loud and cause a chaos mess, and it like creates
See
more of
that,
an issue.
and that's a thing. We're two different factions. You like to go in stealthily.
Because it
I
actually
want
makes
to
more
go in
sense.
loud and make some noise.
Yeah, and the problem is you realize that it takes longer to do that than it would be to just go in stealth and just make it easier.
But it's more fun.
Fine, whatever. But anyways, guys, so this is part 2 of our Far Cry series. So really, we're going to be talking about the likes and dislikes. Kind of go over what we appreciated from a lot of the games. I will mention that we're probably not going to talk so much about the first and second game because unfortunately it was really hard like to come up with some of the things that I remember from even playing it as a kid. But we're gonna mostly focus on the three, Far Cry 3 through 6 because those games were relatively newer and they really did have a lot of like changes and impacts that really created the series as a whole. And it actually makes more sense to probably talk about those more because it really, I would say, not saying that the first two games didn't really have a huge, impact on the series, but it really, these games like moving forward were really, the defining, pieces of how the Far Cry series has become a well known, video game series throughout, throughout the years and whatnot, and especially some of the newer ones that Matt and I will be talking about because there's some cool features. There's some cool, things that you can do in the games, and there's definitely some things that unfortunately, Ubisoft needs to work on because at the end of the day, I'm not saying that every video game company is the greatest on the planet, but there are some things that Ubisoft were it really frustrated the hell out of Matt and I, and again, we'll talk about that in a minute. But Matt, let's do some news. Welcome, everybody. This is Multiverse Studios Live, and as always, you have your boy John and Matt as well. So let's get into the news today.
What's going on, everybody? So, some news coming out of the Star Wars world here. Dave Filoni, of course, is making his own Star Wars movie coming up.
Well, before you get into that, Matt, so because I actually don't know who this guy is, but who is like, what is he known for? What is Dave Filoni known for?
Well, I mean, he is basically a producer, I guess. I mean, he's responsible for, doing a lot of the Mandalorian series. But he's also done, Clone Wars. He's worked on numerous, like Star Wars projects.
Okay, so the franchise, so like as a franchise, like if you know a lot of the Star Wars, like series or films or even like some of the shows that they've worked on, like this guy has been a big part of the success behind it, right?
Yeah, huge part of Star Wars. And I mean, anybody who knows Star Wars, like Dave Filoni, is like one of the top names.
Okay, because I just feel like not many people, unless you are a Star Wars fanatic, I feel like you wouldn't know who this particular person was unless you understood, the Star Wars.
Yeah, and he's one of those guys that like pushes that boundary, especially for Mandalorian. When you watch that show, bringing a lot of like nostalgia and Star Wars history into the show, where you wouldn't necessarily think of all the different little Easter eggs that you see in that show. Dave Filoni is not the only one responsible, but he's primarily responsible for a lot of it and how it looks and how it feels.
Because I'm trying to remember his name. Who was the director of the Mandalorian? Because he was also the director of like the Iron Man.
Well,
Like
there's different ones.
what was like John? What's his name? Trying to remember his name. I'm pretty sure it starts with John. But anyways, like he does a really good job with being an actor and a director as well. I cannot remember his last name off the top of my head. But I will agree with you that Mandalorian. It's actually if I'm not mistaken, it was also the first live action show that Disney created, because, with them, like you were talking about with the Easter eggs and just like going over um, the simple like lore behind it and kind of going right after, 4, 5, and 6 in the Star Wars, I guess, trilogy. Um, it really does give people hope for like a lot of the newer projects that they're going to be coming out with, like some of the newer TV shows like Ahsoka that is going to be hopefully a huge kind of push to introduce like new characters and new like kind of story plots and things like that. But I think Mando definitely was a great TV show overall. I mean, it's still going on, and if you haven't already seen it, you're really missing out. And I,
Right.
I highly recommend you go see it because Grogu, come on, Baby Yoda, like he's adorable. I'm just gonna
Yeah.
say it.
So the news coming out of Star Wars is that his movie that he's making, which is supposed to be kind of the ending of the New Republic, Mandalorian, Ahsoka, Boba Fett kind of world, um, is going to be titled, and this is just a rumor, but it's rumored to be titled Heir to the Empire.
And see that if you don't know a lot about Star Wars, I'm not saying I'm a huge fanatic. I do know, I would say the gist, right? But I mean, if you've seen 4, 5, and 6, I mean, it really does make sense because really, as if you've seen it, technically Palpatine, right? He's the emperor, right, of the Empire. He's the one in charge, and Darth Vader really being the lackey or the second in command, I guess you want to call him. Um, Again, they're not around anymore, as we know. Um, and there's nobody to lead the Empire in that sense. So I think that title alone really is a huge impact onto the story itself and actually bringing the narrative to hopefully like 7, 8, 9 a little bit. It can actually make it more interesting and even kind of developing new concepts to really drive that newer trilogy as well.
Yeah, and if Heir to the Empire, historically, Timothy Zahn wrote a trilogy series of books, and the very first one actually was Heir to the Empire. And these were, like I said, if you read them, these would have actually been 7, 8, and 9,
Right, and not the ones that you've seen.
not the ones that are actual movies, but these books took place right exactly after 6, and the next book in the series took place right after Heir to the Empire. And like I said, it's a trilogy of books, and the main villain of those books is Thrawn, which he's going to be the villain in Ahsoka.
Which and that's why I said I think that with the concept of the movie as well as even the narrative and the storyline, I think it really does, make sense. And I really hope they do it justice because even though that the books are not canon, technically because of Disney and Lucasfilms, saying that, anything book related through that was originally through Lucas, films and
Right.
whatnot, or works. That was part of the actual story behind it, but unfortunately,
Well, and some of the narratives I think from the book, don't really cross over 100% with what has occurred. So I think there needs to be some changes obviously made, but I think naming the movie, if it is in fact named this, who
right, we
knows?
don't know.
But it does bring up, like, yes, we know Thrawn is already going to be the villain in Ahsoka. So if this movie is ending, Mandalorian Ahsoka in the New Republic, which the New Republic is sort of the new empire. If you kind of look at it that way, they're not really, a rebellion against anyways, I
Yeah.
don't want to go too much on a tangent, but
Oh wait, I'm sorry. You don't want to go like the Matrix rabbit hole, like that theory
no,
again?
no.
Okay.
But you have Thrawn that we know is already going to be introduced. We've already seen who it is. We know, we've already seen him in one of the animated, shows. But the good thing about the books is it also introduced a character called Mara Jade, who, if you don't know who Mara Jade is kind of a serious, like, female Jedi.
Well, and I actually had no idea because Matt and I, just before the episode, we just talked about it. I had zero idea of who this person was, which I will say this because I'm going to steal Matt's thunder here for a second. Is he's actually, or sorry, she is actually the wife of Luke Skywalker, which is why this
In
is
the
this.
books, yes.
Okay, sorry, in the books, but it's a serious moment because when you look at this character, if because if I'm not mistaken, this is why Matt and I talked about this, but Luke and her had a son together, which in kind of like if we're looking at the movies, like that doesn't actually happen. Like they're like Luke is by himself, he's alone. He's like in solitude, kind of like Kenobi. Like it's the same thing. It's the same concept, but and even with Han Solo and Leia, Kylo Ren is not technically their son, as I found out, which I guess that would make sense if it's based on the books. And it's a totally different son that they have. So, granted, some of those key aspects wouldn't make any sense now in this particular movie that Matt's talking about, but I think if you maybe introduced her and you introduced certain concept from the book that would actually kind of correlate with the sort the storyline itself, I think it would make sense on the progression and how they did 7, 8, and 9 a little bit, but it depends on how they do that though.
You know what is interesting though, and I'll kind of end it here because I mean it is what it is. We don't know what the name of the movie is, but Mara Jade and Luke Skywalker, yes, they do have a son, and the name of the son is actually Ben, which I
Oh, no
find is
kidding.
kind of interesting.
So what? Oh, so they named it after Kenobi.
Yes.
Okay.
So the name of their son is Ben, and
Oh, actually, wait, no.
Leia and Han also have a child, but it's not Kylo in the books. It's a completely different child.
Actually, no. I'm gonna retract my statement. It's not Kenobi. It's based off of his uncle Ben, isn't it?
Well,
I would assume.
Uncle Ben and Obi-Wan are the same person.
I thought no. I thought he had an Uncle Ben.
Yeah, Uncle Ben is, well, it's not really, it's Uncle Owen.
Oh, Owen. Sorry. Whatever. Okay, maybe you know what? Go ahead. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I thought I was right, but or whatever.
So yes, and then, I think Leia and Han actually have a daughter.
Oh,
But
so it's kind of like that whole Luke and Leia thing. So it's just well, really the I guess sort of the opposite in some ways with like Darth Vader in that sense. But I get what you're
so
saying.
yeah, they have a daughter, and then Mara Jade and Luke have a son named Ben, and they're, as they get older, they're the ones that are more trained as Jedi, if you will, to kind of fight the Empire. That's how the books go.
So it's interesting though because if if that was really if this was actually the case, I can't even imagine how the movies would have been drastically different, especially because Ray being the protagonist in the film, like the trilogy series wise, and the different characters and whatnot. But I mean, I can only imagine having like let's say Ben and like the daughter, so like her cousin or his cousin, being the next generation of Jedi and like them fighting, all the Empire and
Yeah,
like
it
the First
definitely would
Order.
have been interesting, and I obviously believe, do they have to make changes? Yes, because if Mara Jade is in fact the same relationship with Luke, they can't have a son named Ben because Han and Leia had a son named Ben.
Right, which Kylo Ren. But yes,
Right. So take it for what you will. Do some research. Look
or
it up yourselves.
little interesting twist, they could have the daughter instead.
They very well could. Who knows?
But right. And again, do your own research, find out for yourselves. But anyways, Matt, why don't we go over the likes and dislikes of, like I said, we're gonna go over Far Cry 3 through 6. So let's start with the third Far Cry.
So I think just in general, because I do have some thoughts just in general.
Okay.
I think the games in general, I think, gameplay wise, I think it's fairly easy to master, right? I mean, it's not very difficult.
N-
I
yeah.
think the most difficult thing that you have to figure out, I think, is one is climbing, and two is when you go to fall or jump off a cliff, not falling all the way down to the ground.
Well, the one thing that they do, I believe I don't know if it was in 3, but I think it was I know it was in 4, 5, and 6. But the whole like parachute, not the parachute, the glide suit,
Yes, like
like
the wingsuit.
the wingsuit. So like that does come into play, and like it is all about timing, because if you don't get it at the right moment, you will be falling to the ground, and you don't have a choice at that point.
Yeah.
Um,
Or if like five had a lot of trees, you know what I mean? Like four had a lot of trees as well.
I would say
So if
all of them
you're
had a lot of trees in them,
if
but yes.
if you're in an area that has a lot of trees, it's gonna be like a George of the Jungle moment where you're like, "Watch out for that tree!"
I mean, realistically, is like, here's a pro tip.
You're dead.
Fatality. Anyways, um, pro tip, just if you're in an area that is literally filled with like bushes and trees and all kinds of like dangerous objects and stuff, probably not a good idea to be
Just
doing
walk
that.
around.
Yes,
Yeah.
and or go in a vehicle, or you jump out of the vehicle and then do it, or something like. Just don't do it if you're falling off a cliff,
I
because
mean,
it's not wise.
if you absolutely want to jump, go find a higher cliff.
Yes, like go find a mountain and then jump off it. Yes, we're telling you to go jump off a cliff.
Yes.
Yes.
The other thing that I really liked in a couple of the games, you were able to switch the driving controls from using the right stick to drive,
Oh, and then going from like that to like R2, and
changing it to your right trigger,
yeah, like R2 or
which
L2
is kind of
or
a normal driving
mechanism.
control.
Yeah.
That I thought was really cool because you do have some old school gamers who are used to that like Halo style.
Yeah, like the right analog and the left to like kind of moving around and,
And
going forward
then you
backwards.
have, gamers like myself who I just want to hit the trigger and go. I don't want to have to like, oh, I got to, use the right trigger to push in the up and right to turn right. And then if I go left, my car's driving into a house.
Well, and the thing about that too, because now I'm thinking about it, is like that old school, like the right analog and the left analog. Especially if like you're trying to like say shoot out your vehicle, which I know you can do, and I'm pretty sure in all those games, like you can technically like shoot out the window and like fire real quick. Um, it's not wise to do that with the analog sticks, because it's extremely like you can't even shoot at anything,
It's really difficult. Yeah.
and you're not going to be able to maneuver it as quickly as you could if it was like the right, or the like, let's say if you're PlayStation, like myself and Matt, like R2 or L2, hold it down or whatever, and like be able to shoot at the same time. Um but I will say that a lot of these like games in general, I think the concept of, I know in 3 and 4, like when you're having, like, as I know we mentioned it in the last episode, but like having to hunt animals to upgrade all of your gear, and that's like the main source of like how you actually upgrade a lot of your stuff in the game,
Yeah.
is actually kind of annoying, because you know I know in 5 and 6, yes, you can do hunting, you can fish, you can do all these sorts of things, but it wasn't the primary focus. The primary focus was, if you got skill points, you can get it by hunting or fishing, like doing certain challenges that you would do
Right.
to get it.
And
And
it
then,
was based on, more of a financial thing, not really like
yeah,
I need to get, 5 rhino pelts
right, to upgrade like this one.
to upgrade my bait. And like, why the heck would I want to upgrade that pouch? And where do I find 5 rhinos to
I mean,
begin with?
well, no, they find you. I mean, realistically.
And that, with the hunting, like 3, obviously, it wasn't as bad. You know, you didn't have as many pouches to upgrade or things to upgrade where you had to hunt. 4 made it incredibly obscene because I think you had either 8 or 10 different pouches that
Yeah,
you had to upgrade, and each had 4 upgrades.
right. And so it would take a while to finally get to that last level
Yeah.
because also you'd also have to explore the different regions because sometimes different animals may not be in those like the
Right,
ones you've already
like the
explored.
white Bengal tiger was up in the northern part that you couldn't unlock until you did everything in the southern part.
Right. And then on top of that, what sucks is that like you would do some stuff like let's say in the main area and then you have to go up north and then you wait have to go back down again to go find the same animals that you just were at and you were
Yeah.
like, "Well, what the heck?" So it's like you almost have to like pre-plan how many animals you need before you start going up to like certain areas beforehand, which is also very annoying in that in my opinion.
It was quite a pain because you would get 3 pelts for this type of animal, and then you would get them, and then it would be get 4 pelts of a different animal. So now you have to go to a different part of the map to find that animal, and once you get those 4, the next one is now you have to get 5 of a completely different animal, and now you have to go to a different part of the map, and it's like, but that's you have to do that 10 times.
Well, and the worst part too, like I'll mention this as real quick, is like if you're especially at the last upgrade, it's always usually the harder, like the hardest animals to either find or like kill.
And that's where the fashionista mission comes because a lot of them you actually couldn't upgrade that very last one until you started that mission because each of the outposts had a table and you had to go to the table to find where that animal was, and it would be like, a a white crocodile and you had to kill it with a bow and arrow.
Right. And it really didn't it was also very hard because I know in the last episode we talked about a little bit about the bow and arrow, like you it's all about timing. And it's also about how it's timing and distance. And if you're close, I mean that of course it's easier to shoot, but like if you're far away and timing comes into play, it's extremely hard to know if you're going to hit it or not. And so,
Yeah.
especially when like a crocodile or like, is moving quickly, especially in water, you don't know where the heck it's going to go. I mean, you're not going to see it. That's the problem, but if, say, for example, an eagle was flying around,
You're not hitting that with an arrow.
I mean, you can, but I mean, it takes skill. It definitely takes some time to master that, but you can kill it with a bow and arrow. I have done it. It's just it does take a little bit of practice and time to get it just right to
You
hit
know
it
what
on
kills
market.
them?
What?
Grenade launchers.
You're no, but I mean, if you time it right,
Exactly.
yeah, it's all about timing because if not, you're not going to hit it. Um,
So I don't really have anything for 3 because I just recently started playing it. But I mean, 3 and 4 play the kind of the same way. You know,
I mean, the one I would say the one overall aspect of even all the games, the beauty of Far Cry was it gives you the ability to have that open world concept, to be able to go around and not have to worry about like the main story missions. Like you could go explore the areas, you can go do side missions, you can go do the challenges for, hunting or whatever it may have been to upgrade certain, equipment or whatever the case is, but it gives you the freedom to not have to follow what the game is telling you to do. Yes, eventually you'll have to play the main missions and actually get through the story to progress and to be able to upgrade certain, abilities and certain things like that. But that's what I like about what most games are really doing nowadays are doing this open world concept because it gives the player the ability to do whatever they really want and not have to follow a set guideline of whatever it may be. And Far Cry does that really well, and it has for a long time. Oh, go ahead, Matt, because I already can tell
well,
there's
the one
something you want to
thing I
say.
mean, with 5 I liked because it actually showed you where the missions were. And then 4 and 3, initially it took me a while, and sitting there playing, walking around the map trying to find, randomly coming up to fortresses, or hey, there's a tower there, I'll go climb it. It wasn't until I figured out, like, hey, the letters on this map actually like are things that I have to go to
Yep.
because in 3 and 4, it's really, really super unclear. Like, where do I need to go? What do I need? Like, it doesn't tell me what I need to do or where to go.
So that when you just said letters, it you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of like GTA a little bit, like with how like on the maps it would show like the letter L or
That's
like the
exactly what
SA.
it is.
Yeah, it's exactly what it would be like.
But at least in GTA, like you have a little mini map, and you can actually see where the letters are.
Right, and you could pinpoint it and you can like, choose where you need to go. But yeah.
With 4, and this is one of my dislikes for Far Cry, especially, with 4, there is so much grinding to do with all the question marks on the map. All of the, random, masks that you have to either find or destroy. All of the random, boxes of things to find. All the, random missions and all the, just the randomness of everything. You look at the map and it's just, I don't even think you can see the ground on the map because it's full of everything.
I mean, but if you look at like yes, and this is where you can say that 5 and 6 did a better job of like geographical like the terrain on a map because 5 and 6. I mean, 5 was really realistic. I mean, you could literally see everything on the map and like all the landmarks and like where you need to go and like who you need to meet. And I know in 6 they did a good job as well. They kind of like show you like, hey, this is where this is, and this is where you know some of the outposts are, and like so on and so forth. So it gives you a better visual of where you need to go and how to get there. And I mean, they give you the pinpoint, kind of like in that GTA setting where you click something on the map, boom, and it gives you like that automatic like here's where you need to go, and here's like the line of like where you need to go. So I can agree that 3 and 4 didn't really do a good job of that because it's more you are kind of like on your own, and it is kind of like you just kind of need to figure it out as you go, which is not really the answer. Which that's why I think from 5 and 6 they did a really good job with
They did, and
giving it an
you can
explanation.
actually see, when you have a mission, even not looking at a map, if you're in a general vicinity where you can actually it looks kind of like a like American flag type icon.
Yeah,
If you're in a general vicinity of somebody that has a mission, and you can actually see that in a direction, you could just head in that direction.
yeah, and it gives you that ability to not always have to use the map, and you can see like the distance between you and that particular spot that you're looking at, which is nice because that's what I'm going to kind of mention like Assassin's Creed because some of the newer Assassin's Creeds like they've done that where they like kind of give you like the kind of like the heading of like where you're going, like if it's north, south, whatever. But it kind of gives you that like okay, in like 900 meters, there's this mission that you're either trying to get to or there's like some kind of side mission off the side and you may not have noticed that and it just pops up and you're like oh okay cool I can go do that real quick on my way to go to this mission or whatever and not have to keep constantly like, oh, hold on, I gotta pause and I gotta look at the map. Okay, now I know where the heck I'm going.
Yeah.
Which is it is annoying and it is kind of frustrating when if you're just learning the game and you're trying to understand what the hell the letters mean, you really don't have any idea where the hell you're going or
No,
what
and
you're
that was the
doing.
thing. Like, I didn't know, where I was going, and then I randomly saw an A, and I was like, "Well, I guess I'll head there." I don't know what it is, and that was when I met the character, and he sent me on a mission. I was like, "Oh," and then I saw an S, and I was like, "Oh, I'll head towards the S." And then as I kept doing them, I saw another A, and so it finally clicked that I was like, "Okay, now I got to go do the letters. That's where the missions are."
Right.
But
And you're right. And I wish like some games would like give you that
right.
opportunity to be like, oh hey, by the way, these actually mean something instead of like a little tutorial like, hey, just so you know, like these are missions.
Yeah. Um, Far Cry 4. This is like one of the most random things, and I hated. This is what I hated about it: fishing, because
Yeah.
there were certain things like you could get fish pelts, which in the fashionista mission you actually needed. And I forget the name of the fish, but it was one of the bigger ones.
I can't remember off the top of my head, but
But you
yeah.
needed this fish pelt, and you needed to get it without throwing a grenade or some kind of a grenade launcher, without
Right.
blowing it up, basically. But you don't have a fishing pole.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you just have like a knife.
You have either your guns or, I mean, you can't even knife because you're underwater.
Well, yeah,
So
right, right, right.
you either have to take a boat and literally follow this fish on the boat and then stop driving the boat and shoot the fish while it's swimming away. It was the most like awkward like fishing experience in a game.
Well, yeah, and I mean, like in 5, it at least allows you to actually fish. Like you could sit there and actually like pretend like you're actually fishing, like if you were like in real life. I mean, it would allow you to,
Yeah, I mean you
pull
had
the reel
bait, you
back
had a pole.
and but it would give you the motions of like, yes, you're actually like throwing the actual pole and you're letting it go at a certain
Yeah,
time. So it's the same functions. But yeah, I can agree that when you're basically doing some like old school like way of like, okay, guess what?
yeah.
You're driving, you're basically shooting it with your weapons that you have, and there's no fishing pole, there's no nothing, and it's like
And once you kill the fish, you have to swim in the water
to go get
to
it.
go get this fish. And the animation in 3 and 4 to get pelts took so long.
Where right, and I think in 5,
It happened like kind of right away.
yeah, it was like pretty quick. I mean, in like 5, I know with like fishing, it was like it shows you the fish. You're like, oh, cool. That it shows you. What I thought was cool was the pounds, like how
Yeah.
many pounds it
Yeah.
was and whatnot. But then like the one thing about I would say 5 that it was nice is like when you get like the different animals, it actually like tells you exactly how much they cost and like how much you would get if you sold them and how many you had or whatever. So if,
Yeah.
it allowed you to be able to like, for example, like you and I when we talked about the bison, you know, sitting there and blowing that up, and we found out like we made a crap ton of money just from one animal, and you did that like for 2 hours straight, killing these bison over and over and over and over again. I mean, you're getting $10,000, $20,000 like it's nothing, and kept doing that each time, and you're like, cool, great, now I have all this money, I can go do whatever. But in 4 and 3, there is no such. I mean, I'm I'm pretty sure there's money, but not like it's not really worth a whole lot of anything.
Not really. I mean, for, ammo,
Yeah, and I mean,
but
yeah, right. I mean, because that's like the necessity. I mean, because
and buying, it's useful for buying like the weapons and
like
and
like the
stuff.
med kits and you're right,
Yeah.
the other stuff. But I mean, and knowing like 5 and 6, it was more like yes, you're upgrading your weapons, you're upgrading, the or getting vehicles or getting, um, different, attachment, like whatever it may be. Like customization was more intuitive with 5 and 6 than it was in 3 and 4 because
Right.
it was just like you're gonna get all these like animal pelts and you're gonna get like that's your main source of I'm gonna upgrade all my pouches that have more ammo or more bait or more whatever. Like it was just you needed it because you needed to actually survive in this game. Is basically it was the whole point of it. It was like surviving the weather or surviving the enemies or animals that would come after you. So like a rhino randomly showing up and running you down was one of those
It's the thing,
problems.
yeah. So let me talk, John, for a minute on the AI enemies in 5
Okay.
because
I mean, these guys were sometimes stupid, but go on.
they were pretty stupid, but I thought that they were quite excessive, especially like just trying to get around. Like this game in particular, like, in 3, occasionally like you would see them like blocking a road or, walking down a road. And that was the same with 4. Like you would
Well,
kind of see them.
well, you really could say that about all of them because you could potentially see them like
5 though was really like you couldn't even drive 100 feet before seeing maybe one truck, and then as soon as you saw one truck and they saw you,
right. I know like 2 or 3 would come after you.
there was another truck, and then there'd be 2 guys walking behind them, and another guy walking down a trail, and it's like as soon as you dispatch them and you're like, okay, I'm gonna get back in my car, you drive another 150 feet, and then there's a truck driving the other way, and he sees you and stop. It's like, come on, guys.
I mean, I guess you could say in 6 that it was kind of the same thing because, I'm going to mention this because I'll mention this as a good moment or a funny moment is in 6, the one thing that I thought was really cool was you actually can drive tanks in this game. And so Matt, and his brilliant idea was, he's like, you know what, man? Why don't you and I get into a tank? So he's driving, and I just said, you know what? If you're driving, I'm gonna be on the machine gun mount. And then what did I do? I just started killing everything. And he said, you better stop killing people. And I'm like, Nah, man, I want to see how well we can cause chaos. I mean, we were getting into some serious fights, and I mean, you would see, enemies just coming and coming and coming and coming, and it was to the point where, at one point, Matt's like, "All right, listen, we need to get the hell out of here." And driving this thing is slow, and it is slow. It's not fast. It's not anything. I mean, if you wanted to get from one side of the map to the other, driving a tank was the wrong answer because we tried that from like one spot to another. And I mean, I'm pretty sure it almost took us like an hour or 2 hours just to get to one side of the map on a tank. And he was like, this is ridiculous. I'm like, you had the brilliant idea. I said we could have drove in my, um, my Doom buggy plane, but he didn't want to do that because he felt the need to always jump out. And I'm like, dude, I'm going to land. He's like, no, you're not. You're going to blow us up.
No, that thing's gonna blow up.
But
But no, I think the AI in 5, especially on the roads, were very very excessive. Now, when you're taking out outposts, I did find doing outposts extremely easy.
well, I mean, it realistically is like once you took on an outpost and, you did some of the radio towers nearby, um, I'm not saying there wasn't like as much. I think like when you explore a new area, yes, I agree that there was a lot of enemies. But once you actually took over that particular spot, the enemies started to kind of die down and kind of back off a little bit. It wasn't as excessive. Yes, were they still kind of roaming around a little bit in random areas? Absolutely. But I agree in the beginning when you're going to these particular areas, yeah, there's multiple, and it's like you said, like there's 100 feet. Yep, there's like five of them hanging out, doing whatever. And the worst part is like he said, it's you know, oops, sorry, you get this like wave of enemies all of a sudden. If one person comes and finds you or whatever, yes, you're gonna have like four or five, and then multiple, and then if they all follow you, guess what? Their buddies are coming right behind them, and they just keep forming this line. And it gets to a point where you're just like, listen, at that point, you might as well just get into a plane. And actually, that was an issue in 5 too. And then I remember was
There were planes.
well, there were planes, but there was planes that were they if they started to hunt you, they were flying those planes and they were coming right after you, especially if you were on foot. And that's a pain because
Yeah.
a lot of them were like dogfighting, and like if you were in a plane, I mean, it was cool that you could dogfight, in the sky and be able to do that. But it is a pain because these guys were highly skilled in their planes, surprisingly
Oh
enough.
yeah, they were flying around all crazy like.
But
But like I said in the other episode, 5 is one of my favorites, and as I guess, with the religious theme of it,
I mean, when
people
you,
didn't like the overall, cult religion
I mean,
theme of it, but I liked that theme. I thought it was different. 6 kind of went back to that like kind of dictator, thing, but
yeah,
5 was really really different in that like, this cult wasn't necessarily, trying to take over a country. It wasn't a dictator.
I mean, the problem with 5, it really wasn't. I mean, to me, it was no problem. But when you look at the overall concept of, the religious cult being radicals. I mean, that's really what they were. They were radicals of, what they were doing. And they were trying to establish their own form of, I don't want to say government, but like their own style of like beliefs and, the way they handled things. I mean, granted, they were, yeah, I mean, in some ways, I mean, they were like, they could be categorized as a terrorist group because they were becoming a threat to.
I mean, for those of you that finished the game, obviously.
Yes, but that's what I'm saying is like, it
Yeah.
became, more of like their own. It almost like turned into a gang. Like, and like that's kind of like what it felt like. But like, when we talk about now, I'm thinking about like the bosses of like 5. I mean, honestly, the easiest one was John. I mean, yes, he was kind of a, I'll say it, he's a douche. But, you know, you look at, Jacob. Jacob was like the militant, kind of, he was definitely hard to like go against and do all that. But like, you know, he was he was strict. Like he was like, that like military like kind of figure and whatnot. But Matt and I agree, especially in our last episode, the most weirdest of them all is Hope. And because of that whole LSD trippy kind of vibe, and you walk in, and all of a sudden she's like, "Hey, wow!" It's like this beautiful world's around me, and like getting shot by the bliss bullets that just randomly come after you, and it becomes more of an illusion, this hallucination, and really that's
Yeah.
what it is. And it actually is more of a pain in the butt to go against her and try to defeat her and do all this. I mean, of course you can. It's not as bad as once you get the patterns and the rhythm of what she does, but the game itself, which I liked, was this was definitely the first time where it allowed you to not only go after just one, it allowed you to go after all four of them, but not have to do it in, like I said in the previous episode, but like in any particular order, which was nice. And it allowed you to kind of, explore the world for what it was. And, a lot of it, as you probably know, if you've ever been to Montana, a lot of it's, mountainous, and a lot of, forest, and a lot of different, aspects of it. I mean, it really did a good job on, showing what the likeness of Montana was in some degree. Um, and I think the religious, aspect was a lot different than, most probably games in general, because I don't think a lot of games would ever probably go that particular route. But I think they did a good job on how they really wanted to stand apart,
Yeah.
from all the other games itself as a whole,
And I mean, there were themes within the game that I think were kind of weird. It got kind of silly,
I mean,
and
yeah.
having to go get that lady's monster truck.
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
like
yeah, I mean that
there
is a little
there
weird.
were things like the testy festy.
Oh,
You
oh
know,
God, that was a bad mission. We're not gonna explain that one, but that
no,
is a.
no, we're not going to explain it. But there are things within the game, and you're like, how is getting some lady's monster truck or the testy festy, whatever that is,
No,
having to do with like a cult and religion? It doesn't. Not really.
no,
I mean,
no.
there are side quests in the game, but it's mainly for that particular character.
I mean, I would say in five, the side quests were definitely more. I would say more involved. Like they actually had a nice little like storyline to whatever which ones you were playing, and some of it like getting like a fishing pole. Like that was a side quest, but it actually allowed you to get, again, fish. And you had to basically meet up with this woman, and I think she had to, I don't know, I can't remember the exact. I think you had to like go over to some dude's place and then like grab the fishing pole and then say, "Oh, here's my fishing pole. You can have it." And then you would do like a couple other ones that you'd help her out again, but then she'd help you get to those, higher level, fishing rods, and you would again be able to catch different um, styles of fish or whatever that you needed for, that particular area with that certain bait that you would also get as well. And so it did kind of like make it different in that aspect because, 3 and 4, yeah, yeah, like I said, you have side quests, you have all these different things, but it was just kind of like, okay, you do them great, but it doesn't really correlate to how you were playing the game or like, was it really helpful
Yeah,
overall?
I mean, 4 had that whole Shangri-La, aspect of it where you would, and I don't know if like the character actually getting high triggered going to Shangri-La,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
if, you just kind of went there. But in a few times in the game, you kind of go to this otherworldly place,
Like mystical place, yeah.
and it's kind of filled with these
Like demon.
demon type figures, and I think you get kind of like this special blade or something.
Yeah, I think it's yeah.
Initially, like you just kind of have to run away from them, but you do get kind of this special blade where you can kind of kill them, stealthily. But
Yeah,
it does get kind. I mean, that one does get kind of weird too because there are two characters in that game in 4 that their whole primary drive is to get high, and when you go talk to them they get you high, and like the sky turns into it's like multicolors,
yeah,
and
and it
like
makes it
you're
weird.
running around, and it's just weird things are happening. And
Yeah, and I mean, kind of like we mentioned before about like 5 and also like 6. You know, the one of the cool features was the companions, right? So being able to like, having, your like animal companions because there was I think it was it a panther in the fifth one or not a panther? It was a leopard, I think. I can't remember exactly. It was like the I want to say it might have been a panther, and you would have had Boomer as just like a farm dog, and then you had was it Cheeseburger? He was the bear. He was the big old bear that you could play. But dude, man, like some of these other, I think those were the only three. I don't know if there was a fourth one off the top of my head. I don't.
Yeah, I mean they capitalized that more in
In
6,
six, yeah,
where they
because
did the amigos, which were obviously more helpful depending on which one you picked.
yeah, and I mean, because there was no really, I don't think there was any human companions because I think it was just more.
No, because the amigos, some helped with exploration, some helped finding stuff, others helped like security wise, others helped with combat.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, and I know we mentioned this last episode, but till this day, probably the weirdest companion, in my opinion, is honestly the rooster. And I will say it again. Choose your own. Like you play the sixth one, you'll understand. We mentioned it a little bit in the last episode, but like the fact that you're wanting to get a rooster as a companion. Now, mind you, there's one special thing about Chicharon that I did find interesting. It was the razor sharp, metal talons at the end of his feet that would now, mind you, when you look at him in the game and you see him attack people,
But
it's vicious. Like it's not.
he kills people.
I mean, legit. Like it's bad. Like
Yeah, he,
it's not.
he kills people.
I
Yeah.
mean, yeah. Like I'm not gonna lie. You don't want to screw with him because no. Like when you see like graphics and stuff, like no, that's not. That is not a rooster I want to be messing around with. But with the companions,
Yeah.
it was a nice concept, and I think it really does. I mean, moving forward, whatever the next game they come out with, I really hope that they bring those kinds of things back because it doesn't make any sense why you wouldn't, especially because if certain parts of the game might help you, like you said, explore, or there might be things where it might help you kill enemies faster, or whatever it may be. It helps overall with the gameplay because even if you're not with for example, because the one thing we're going to mention now I'm thinking about it is co-op,
We'll
right?
we'll get there. I just have one more thing for 6, and then we'll talk about the co-op.
Okay.
The one thing I did like about 6, which you don't find in a lot of the other ones, probably because they just didn't have them, or maybe I didn't play them when they did.
Okay.
Was a lot of the DLC content, and in 6, you do get to meet Machete,
Or
Danny Trejo. You do get to do a Rambo mission. I actually did play the Stranger Things mission. But there's all kinds of different like cool features with the DLC. Plus they, had all of the 3 packs from, Voss, Pagan Min, and
Joseph Seed, yeah.
Joseph Seed, where it kind of explored their individual, kind of dream worlds, I guess.
I mean, and I feel like that kind of helped you want to play some of the older games because that kind of, I mean, it was like a nice little like
They were
side.
weird.
Oh, I mean, I mean, probably the weirdest one we played.
Well, we haven't
I
played the
well, we didn't
Joseph
play
Seed
no,
one.
but the other two, like Voss was probably one of the weirdest ones that I can remember. Pagan was it was okay,
Pagans was okay.
but Voss was weird. Like his
Bosses,
was
yes, that one was completely weird.
it was
Yes.
because like again when we mentioned that he's a psychotic serial killer, like
Yeah.
insane, like it's
But
that
what's
bad.
good about, those 3, and like I said, we haven't played that last one, but what's good about them is they kind of give you more of that inside look at kind of who they are,
Right.
which is weird when you think about it because they're the villains.
Right, and I
And it
mean,
kind of makes them almost the main character, not the antagonist,
Right.
which is
Well, it was part of the thing where it doesn't explore that in the other games that you play because you're only focusing them on as the villain. But
but they become instantly more interesting
yeah, I
as
mean,
a character than, I mean, in what, 2 you're playing as a mercenary. Like you don't really have a name until you get to 3, and then 4,
yeah,
5 and 6 you kind of have a name. I mean, 5 you don't really have a name other
no,
than deputy.
deputy, right? It's just the deputy, but like Danny. So the funny thing is about this, what six is like when you're playing as Danny Rojas. I mean, the name itself can either go male or female. It really doesn't like necessarily have a gender. It's a gender neutral name, and so it really works both ways. But it allows you to kind of pick that male female character, just like in five. Um, but anyways, just like what we're gonna talk about now is co-op.
Co-op. So what we love about it is the ability to do it. What we hate about it is one certain aspect is with the co-op. Yes, John and I or anybody, you're playing a game. Hey John, come in, I'll invite you. John comes into my game. We play for 2 hours straight. We do 7 missions, we do some side quests. Hey man, I got to go to bed, dude. Like
Right.
I save my game, he saves his game. We turn off our systems, we go to bed.
And then let's say we play again a couple days later.
We play a couple days later. I'm exactly where I was because he joined my game. John, where are you?
So here's the best part. Ready? So let's say I say, you know what? Why don't you join my game? Right? So he joins my game this time. Funny fact, it doesn't matter what you did in his game because it only helps him. So wherever I was just at is where I'm at. So now everything we just did, the 7 missions, now we get to redo that whole thing on my game. And so that's part of the reason why co-op in a lot of games, there's only very few games that I've actually played that actually were able to sync at the same time, which one of them was Wildlands.
Well, and the funny thing is, like, I've played a lot of co-op games. Borderlands is one
Yeah.
that saves.
Wildlands was another.
Uh, Ghost Recon, both of those.
Yeah, well, yeah, Wildlands
Um,
and Breakpoint. Yep.
Breakpoint saves, but every single Far Cry that has had that co-op,
Does not.
if and this is, just expert tip here, if you're playing co-op with a friend online, play a few missions, stop, save your game, jump into the other person's game, do those missions. Because if you play, and some gamers will play 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours in one session,
Right.
and basically complete half of the game with your friend.
Now you get to redo the whole thing all over
Now
again.
you're gonna have to do the whole thing over on his game, even though yours saved, and you're kind of like, ha, sucker,
Well, the
you're
one.
on your own
Well, I
now.
mean, like for example, I did that with six a little bit because I was already ahead at the time when he was playing it, so I already had an understanding. So it didn't really matter for me as much. But like, if you're both playing at the same time, it really sucks because like when you're playing the game and you're like, ah, crap, I already played this, and you're like, well, I don't know anything about what just happened. I'm like, well, let me tell you, I know all the tricks now. It kind of helps a little bit, but the main point of this is that Ubisoft, if you're listening, or maybe one day you will, um, work on your co-op, man, because holy
Yeah.
crap, it
We
is
want both sides of the game to save.
like, why can't you, like, if you can do it with Ghost Recon, why can't you do it with frickin' Far Cry? Because I mean, god dang it, like, there's no reason, there's no
Yeah,
excuses.
yeah.
If you can do it with one game, there's no
It's
frickin'
just
reason why you
so
can't.
it's just really awful because we would get to that point where maybe we played for a couple hours and like we're not thinking about it, so we're like, bro, I'm just done, and we just like we save and we sign off, and then as soon as we sign off, we're like,
Dang it.
dang it, we gotta do that all over again, and
And,
then like the next time we jump on, we're like, you know what we're doing, right?
yep, you're jumping on mine now.
Oh
Boy.
boy,
Yeah, and it
like I just did this.
I was like, yep, but we get to do it all over again. And so that's why sometimes it's better if, let's say, for example, like you and your buddy, like you can only get a chance to play it like a couple times here and there. You know, it's better if, like, let's say you do one time with them and then, let's say you do it on yours, right? Okay, that's great. But like, your buddy has to remember he's gonna have to do the same thing unless he wants to catch up, in that regard.
Yeah.
So it's all about timing. It's all about that piece. Um, you know, with like we've mentioned before with 5 and 6. I mean, personally, 5 and 6 are definitely, in my opinion, definitely better adaptations of these games as the series continues, and they've really improved a lot on the mechanics of the game, the graphics, what you can do, the customization. I mean, 6 goes into, like we've talked about in the last episode, like Supremo weapons, and being able to like get these like ultimate weapons that really help your character like do an extreme amount of damage in like so many aspects. So mentioning like the hacksaw, the rocket launchers, the flamethrower. Like there's so many different weapons in this game that you wouldn't have get in like 5 or in any of the previous games, and it really
Right.
does change your style of gameplay, because there have been times where I remember like we both get the same weapon. And we're like, yeah, you want to go, bro? Huh? And and we kept going, and we're like, all right, fine. And so we'd switch off, and like, he'd shoot me with a hacksaw, I'd shoot him with a flamethrower. We'd switch off, we'd go back to like a rocket launcher, and we do other things, and it makes it kind of fun and stupid at the same time. But it's interesting where Far Cry has a great they do great stories, they do great gameplay and mechanics and whatnot. I mean, it's realistic. I mean, as realistic as it can be. I mean, it's not going to go like, hey guys, let's do virtual reality. I mean, if they ever did virtual reality, I don't know. I mean, that might be another ball game on that one.
It might be interesting, but I mean, there are. I mean, some of the games did have elements of sci-fi and science fiction, but does it get silly? Does it get weird? Yes, it does. Are they perfect games? No, they're not perfect. Certainly there is story issues, I would say, that could be raised, but I think as a whole, the Far Cry series has gotten better over the course of the 6 games, and it's worth playing. Whether you start with 3 or you start with 4, it really doesn't matter where you start. I mean, you can start with 6 and play 5 and play 4 and play 3. It really doesn't matter, but the game is worth playing.
Yeah, I mean, when Matt and I talk about like different video game series and stuff like that, so like when we talked about like Destroy All Humans, even this and like future ones. I mean, we're not just telling you things that, we're just like, again, we're selling you, or we're, making you believe that this game is like the best game ever. We play games all the time. There's different games that he plays that I definitely have not played or care to play. And just there's games that he admits as well. Like he doesn't probably want to play some of the games that I play. So we have different play styles. But, when we have games that we can play together and we have done, together and played it together, we try to give you guys a great overview, like of what we think is great, what is not great, whatever. But we're not just telling you like play the game just because we're telling you to. It's because we're saying, hey, no, this is a great series of games. These are things that if you want to, go in and, do some numbless, time wasting or whatever, you can, do that. Or if you want to play a good, like kind of like story missions and, different side quests or different, hell, you want to go fishing one day? Oh, I got you, bro.
You
Let's
just
go
want to
fishing.
go hunting? Go for it. Hey,
There's so many different things in these games that you can do that, unfortunately, like, like let's say, for example, if you're a Call of Duty player, what are you doing? You're shooting people. That's it. There's no that's the whole point of the game. Like there's no reason behind it. You're just going in, you're killing people. Okay. Like granted in this game you're doing the same kind of thing, but there's more to just the game than just shooting people. There's more, you know, side quests. There's more like different challenges. I mean, there was in 5 there was like it was like an evil Knievel, racing challenge, and you'd have like different vehicles you have to use and so forth. And it's different, it's unique, and it kind of gives you some other kind of like gameplay, to be able to play it and whatnot. But it doesn't define the game as a whole, because as a whole, like Matt was saying, Far Cry is one of those games that you dive in, you can get hooked on it. I mean, even in the first, few minutes of playing the game. I mean, depending on which one you play. I mean, when Matt and I played the 5, oh my god, like the first 5 minutes, I'm like, what the heck is going on? And you don't even know, and then you finally get in, and then it's like you get into it, and it's not just like you sit there and wait. Like the story gets real progressive real quick,
Yeah.
and same with 6. So if anything, if you have a newer console, play 5, play 6. If you can find a way to get 3 and 4, play those two. I mean, hell, if you want to play the very first Far Cry or anything like that, go for it. I mean, I don't even know if they still have it on the
I mean,
PlayStation.
if you're on PlayStation, I mean, they probably are on the, if you have a PlayStation Plus, depending on your PlayStation Plus membership,
Right.
you might have. I think the one right below premium.
Right. I think. Well, I thought you had the top tier one, like the absolute like.
I used to, but
Oh,
I
you
went
dropped.
down to that middle one.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Like again, if your Xbox, of course, the Xbox Pass or Game Pass, you can go on there too, and I wouldn't guarantee it, but I mean, you can always see if
But
they
with the
had it.
Plus membership, I know 3, 4, and 5 are in the PlayStation Plus.
Right.
I
And
just don't know, if you have the classics library,
you
1
might
and
be
2
able
might
to.
be in there. I don't know, but
That's kind of pushing it,
you can
but
always go to GameStop or something and buy them probably for like $3.99 or something.
if you can find them.
I'm sure you can find them.
But
Anyways, so I think that pretty much concludes everything for our Far Cry episodes.
yeah, I mean, overall, we love giving you guys content. We love giving, our general feed, or really, I guess, our own opinions, possible debates, depending on, what episode we're doing. But, um, yeah, I think for the most part, we just, we love what we're doing, and we just want you guys to know that. Actually, now I'm thinking about it, a little fun fact. Matt and I found out recently, not only do we have people from Ireland and South Korea, we now just got a new country that is now listening to us, is India. So,
Maybe it's pagan men. Who knows?
I don't, I mean, no, I mean, that if it's based in Nepal, then that's a whole nother region. But anyways,
Anyways,
you guys, we want you to know that, it doesn't matter where you are. We just hope that, what we're doing actually is enjoyable, and we want you guys to like listen and of course share, our, social media, or, even just like Spotify links, whatever, or other major platforms that we've been using, right? And like just like in the last episode, we want to make sure that you understand that, we have a link tree. We should have it on Facebook. Again, we should, well, potentially we're going to make sure that it's on Instagram here shortly, but
it's on both.
is it on both? Okay, well
Yep.
then there you go. He just confirmed it. So either way, go on there. Give us a shout out. Give us a like. Also keep in mind that we do have a website. So if you do want to ever go on there, kind of see who we are. We have like geeky shorts that we're you know here and there we're working on a little bit here and there. But as always,
Stay geeky.